The ways of the gods are incomprehensible. Far more predictable is the path walked by a man who considers himself a god. So too it was for Sargon, the greatest conqueror Mesopotamia has ever known. Like the legendary shepherd that founded our great city, Sargon seemed to have descended from heaven, a grown man, crafted by the gods to rule the world. But while his true origins remain a mystery, his earthly story began here, in Kish, a place so beautiful that even the lustrous words of the poets cannot do it justice. Back when I, Ishtar, was still a man of youthful strength, Kish was ruled by Baba. If the gods had molded Sargon from clouds and ether, Baba was made from common clay. Nothing about him was exceptional, save for his fondness for fine food, extravagant clothes, and luxurious wine. Baba had appointed Sargon as his cupbearer, and the shy, unassuming adolescent served him wine and kept him company in many a lonely hour. Yet, unbeknownst to the king, Sargon was plagued by a strange, recurring dream. Ishtar, the goddess of war, appeared to Sargon in his sleep and promised him extraordinary things. One day, she said, he would be king not only of Kish, but of all the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris. Not realizing the weight of his words, Sargon told his master of the dream, and the king turned pale. Had the boy who served him every day truly been chosen by the goddess of war? Baba could not allow this prophecy to come true. He banished Sargon to the desert, and in doing so, he convinced Sargon that the goddess had spoken truly. Yet banishment was not enough for the frightened king. He soon sent Kish's most vigorous warriors to ambush his former confidant among the dunes. I was one of those men. As a smith, I was the strongest, and when Baba ordered me to swap my hammer for a sword, I accepted, but not without hesitation. By now, the tale of the banished servant and his dreams had spread far beyond the royal palace. Many who suffered under Baba's rule saw Sargon as a savior. When I finally caught up with him at a remote well, he was resting in the shade. I left my sword in its scabbard and faced a man who showed no fear. In his mind, he was no longer a simple servant. He was indeed Ishtar's chosen one. As we entered the royal palace in Kish, I swelled with joy and pride. Sargon had triumphed, and it seemed that this man, blessed by Ishtar, was truly invincible. Yet in my quiet moments, I wondered if it would ever have come to this if Baba had not expelled Sargon. Had we fulfilled a prophecy? Or had a simple dream become prophecy, only after the fearful king sealed his own fate? Dreams and oracles, visions and prophecies, it seems that these mysterious forces can be as dangerous to those who believe in them as they are to those who ignore them. Our soldiers often wondered where Sargon had actually come from. Some believed that he had descended from heaven, like the founder of Kish. Others said that he was an orphan who had been found in a basket floating on the Euphrates. I have even heard some townsmen say that he was the son of a priestess who had given birth without having ever lain with a man. Sargon only smiled at these rumors. He said that it does not matter where a man comes from, only where he goes, and that he himself follows the path that Ishtar shows him. That path led to war. With Kish subdued, Sargon sent his army to conquer the countless city-states of Mesopotamia in Ishtar's name. The masters of these cities scoffed at Sargon's ambitions, yet secretly, they all feared him. In order to match Sargon's army, they joined forces under the leadership of Lugal-Zagisi, the priest killer. He was a brutal man, feared for his atrocities across the region. He would often desecrate the temples of the cities that he conquered. Yet, he was a capable tactician and a gifted commander, a suitable challenge for Ishtar's champion. After several bloody campaigns, the enemy coalition was crushed. The goddess of war may have enjoyed the slaughter, yet I shuddered at the piles of bodies that we left behind in her name. Still, our mission was not over. Ishtar had promised Sargon all of the land that lies between the two great rivers. But as long as Lugal-Zagisi remained at large, Sargon's claim to hegemony would be challenged. As the tyrant fled southwards, our soldiers pursued him to his well-fortified capital of Uruk. There, holed up behind its walls, he began scheming once more. Once, as Lugal-Zagisi was burning down a temple, a dying priest uttered with his last ragged breath, "The blood of the innocent will be paid for by the blood of the one." Not one to ignore a second prophecy, Sargon took the priest's words to heart, and reports of them reached his ears. They became a mantra that our soldiers echoed as we marched on Uruk. We knew that Ishtar would guide our way and grant us victory once more. When we captured Lugal-Zagisi, we did not kill him right away. Forcing him into a yoke like a common criminal, we paraded him all across Sargon's new kingdom. We took him as far as Lagash, within whose ruins the dying priest had pronounced his prophecy. The evil defiler looked old and frail as he knelt in the temple ruins for his execution. His death ended the age of kings that had guided the fortunes of Mesopotamia for centuries. Now it was up to Sargon to shape his new empire, and it soon became apparent that he had ambitious plans. Plans that chilled my blood. Despite not having been groomed for rule, Sargon had a natural talent for kingship. He built his new capital of Akkad to the north of Sumer, sending his new subordinates a powerful message. He would not follow the traditions established by past kings. No. This was truly a new beginning. An enormous court soon surrounded Sargon. More than 1,000 servants, priests, scholars, and soldiers populated the king's palace, and they all had to be fed and paid. Sargon therefore turned his sights on neighboring kingdoms. Once, the dominion of Mesopotamia had been the sum of his ambitions. But Sargon had changed. The larger his entourage grew, the more he pushed his old companions away. And the greater the riches he amassed, the greedier the flickering in his eyes seemed to me. He hardly spoke of the goddess of war anymore. He no longer visited her temples, nor offered her sacrifices. It seemed that as his power grew, Sargon forgot to whom he owed his throne. And now, as he rallied his armies to conquer the kingdom of Elam, he tempted her wrath. Can a mortal being of flesh and blood become a god? I asked myself this question more and more often as we embarked on a brutal campaign of conquest through lands so distant that I would never have imagined visiting them. The divine will, which Sargon once received and taught his followers, was now indistinguishable from his own. He made it abundantly clear that his will was to enlarge his empire, whatever the cost. I was not the only one who noticed our king's change of character. Discontent brewed among the population. Many of the soldiers, tired and spent from constant campaigns, harbored thoughts of treason. Sargon did not seem to notice his people's growing distrust. Caught up in his own world where friend and foe alike gave way to him, he was already planning his next conquest. A campaign that would lead us even deeper into darkness. Blood, sweat, tears, and the stench of burning bodies accompanied us on our way east. And it was not long before my fears came true. Barely had we crossed into the kingdom of Subartu when our people took up arms in rebellion. After years of grandiose campaigns, they were sick of the exorbitant taxes that Sargon levied to fund his wars. When I shared the bad news with Sargon, I hoped that he would see reason and accept that he had taken things too far. But the hateful glare in his eyes suggested the opposite. Can a mortal being of flesh and blood become a god? The answer is no. No matter how much power a man attains, anyone who towers too far above others is doomed to fall in the end. Sargon was the king of kings, the most powerful man that had ever walked the earth. His empire, the first that mankind had ever seen. In the temples, Sargon had replaced the statues of the gods with statues of himself. And now, truly believed that he was divine. Yet I had seen him bleed. I sought him out after the sack of Subartu, only to find him standing atop a mountain of gold and corpses, precious stones passing through his fingers. He did not listen when I told him that this madness had to end. Once, I left my sword in its scabbard to spare the man who would be my king. But things were different this time. This was no man standing in front of me, no deity. It was an evil demon from the underworld, striding the earth to claim the souls of the innocent. I then remembered the prophetic words, "The blood of the innocent will be paid for by the blood of the one." I plunged my blade deep into Sargon's chest. As he stared at me with wide eyes, a strange, wicked smile appeared on his face. Even in the face of death, Sargon never ceased believing in his own immortality. I have no such delusions. As old age withers my once supple frame, I welcome the journey to the afterlife, satisfied that no more innocent blood will be spilled in the name of this false god. Yet, I fear Sargon's legacy. The vices of power and a desire for divinity can inspire grim changes in even the most noble of men. I can only pray that for every haughty Sargon, there will be a humble Ishtar, guided not by delusions of grandeur, but by a simple conscience of what is right and what is wrong.